Rob Ruckus.
Hey, this is Kate Clover.
Hey guys, it's Nick Collins here from The Effect and Better Strangers.
Hi, my name is Madeline Rose.
Hey, it's Ben McKelvey.
It's Tim Howard here from Mike and the Mechanics.
Hello, I'm Amanda Lehman.
I'm Billy Harvey.
What's going on, everybody? I'm Casey Sampson from the band Twist Stop.
Hey, it's Tony from Fastball.
Hello, everybody. My name is Isaiah Mitchell.
Hey guys, it's Matt here from the White Lakes.
You're listening to Almost Famous Magazine.
Come join us for this interview. Check it out, Almost Famous Magazine.
Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to The Hang right here on Almost Famous Magazine. Today, I'm welcoming Patty Hearse. She's lead singer of the LA Slumlords, which we first learned about when I was photographing the punk rock bowling weekend this year. Totally blown away by this band, by the way, that we just realized we had to have them as guests and talk about them. So they've been a punk stable for many years, but today we're going to hang with Patty and learn their history and much more. So Patty, welcome.
Hey, Scott. Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You know, many outside the punk scene really don't know the history of the band. Tell us how LA Slumlords started and give us the history coming up to today.
Yeah, sure. So we started in 1998 exactly. And we always say that we started in 98 and left boot prints. And so we've always been very strong-minded, politically minded. And what happened was, like any band is, there was drama. So we ended up breaking up. And then a couple of years later, when the whole Bush administration started, George W., my writing partner and I, James Cross, he and I got together, patched things up, and we're just angry. We're angry about the Iraq War and angry about Bush and Cheney and just Halliburton and all that terrible stuff, war for oil, and so we decided to try it again, and we wrote a bunch of songs that was sort of more dedicated to that, and we went strong for a long time. We ended up on Guitar Hero 3. We had a song called Down and Dirty that made it on Guitar Hero 3, and then drama again, and and we broke up again, and then that was the last time, and there was a memorial that he and I both attended, and we were like, life is too short, and so we decided that we were going to be friends again, and then that led to him actually managing a tribute band that I had called the Bitch Fits, that was a Misfits tribute, all female. Excuse me, all female, and then led to us actually being asked to do a one-off show with Fear and the Adolescents, and that was in November, and we just thought we were going to do one show, and it went so well. It just went incredibly, and so we thought it's time to pull it out again. We're getting the band back together, man.
Well, I think that's great because, again, I first learned about you guys at Punk Rock Bowling Weekend, and I'll be honest, you all look like you were having the time of your life. I have, you're the gentleman behind the kit, Giz Laszlo. I have some photos of him smiling like just a child. It's this big grin, and truth be told, most drummers have some of the weirdest looking faces when they're drumming when you capture in the moment. But every photo, he's just loving every minute of it. How did Punk Rock Bowling come around for y'all?
Well, I mean, I'm not really sure because we were around for quite a while. Back in the day, I mean, we played with the UK subs. We had some big shows back in the day, and we got Guitar Hero and all of that. And I'm not really sure how it happened, but we we got asked to do it. And although the Stearns, who are the ones that actually started punk rock bowling, are old friends of mine, and I attended punk rock bowling for 20 years from the audience looking, looking at the band, and I don't know, maybe they just thought it was my time, who knows? So, it was a different experience this time.
Yeah, no, certainly. And so turn the tables there. You went from a 20-year spectator
Yes.
to the main stage. How did that feel, and what was that like?
Well, it was incredible. It was terrifying, okay? So, like, the first 2 days, I was a wreck, the first 2 days before, sick and a wreck, and just it was a nightmare it was a nightmare to be around. And then once we hit the stage, I mean, it was incredible. The adrenaline kicked in, and, honestly, that stage was humongous, and we had a good sized crowd, even though we were the openers, and it was really hot. It was like 90 degrees. You were there.
I was there.
And people stuck around. They stuck around for the whole set, and so yeah, it was amazing. I mean, I've seen the incarnation of punk rock bowling go from a very small venue with one band and emphasizing the bowling part for years, and then branching out to a warehouse with more bands, and then a bigger venue, and then trying from a hotel to vans transporting people to the bowling alley to watch the show, to all of a sudden to these humongous events that have been going on for like the last, I don't know, 10-15 years. It's been a real trip watching them grow like that.
Oh, no, it's definitely a festival I think everybody should experience at least once in their life. This is my first one this year. I was a little partial. I really wanted to see Devo and Madness, but the cool part is you go to Punk Rock Bowling Weekend, and I think there's such an opportunity to find so many more musicians, right? We've had a Kate Clover on, and we talked to Rob Ruckus of the Shakewells and learned about the Punk Rock Museum, and now we have you here, and it just opens your mind to so many great bands that you may not know about.
Absolutely. And this year, I think especially they focused on more unknown bands, more female fronted bands, more female oriented bands, which is like, well, okay, it's about time. Women have been in rock and roll for 50 years, but better late than never, I suppose.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, I noticed that. I mean, there were more women on stages than there were guys.
Absolutely.
And that's a rarity at a festival.
Absolutely is a rarity. And, being a woman in, punk and rock and all of that, and having like people interview you saying, well, what's it like being a woman in rock and roll? What does that mean? What does that mean?
Right.
So I'm glad that things are starting to there's finally getting some equity on stage, because women have a lot to show, and we've had to have a lot to prove in the past, which has made us a little tougher, and as you can hear in my voice, a little more bitter at times. but things are definitely evolving, and that is a good thing. I don't know how long that's going to last as far as the country goes, but as far as the scene, there's definitely some evolving happening. So
yeah, and there's definitely momentum. I mean, you can feel it. Just I was in a record store a couple of weeks ago, and there were more female artists of new releases than I think I've seen in a while. And it was great. I was taking my niece she just got a record player. So she's at that age. And it's great to have, women musicians fronting bands, putting their work out there and setting a great example.
Exactly. Great drummers, amazing drummers, amazing guitar players, bass players, songwriters, the whole bit. I mean, they're all out there.
Absolutely. And it's growing numbers, I think, and I think it's great. But you are backed by all men in the LA Slumlords.
Yeah.
So it's women power at front, and the men are following up with the beat behind. Let's talk a little bit. Tell us about the current members of LA Slumlords and a little bit about each of their secret sauce that they bring to the sound of the band.
Well, I'll tell you, we are in a transitional period right now. So the core members right now are me and my partner, James Cross and I. And then Giz has been with us for a year, so we're hoping, that that's going to stick. But we're definitely in a transitional period. But one thing that we really like about the bass players that we have played with especially is that fuzzy, like Motorhead sound. And that's what we want. We want that Motorhead playing with a pick, like almost like a guitar sound that comes out. So we want to be like Tina Turner meets Motorhead. That's, that is our goal. And so our last bass player that played at Punk Rock Bowling brought that, and we want that in our next bass player, which we are getting. So
is this a want ad here? Can people watching, if they have that attitude that the bass is a percussion instrument and they're hammering down on the strings with picks, with a lot of fuzz, should they be reaching out to you, Patty?
Well, I mean, we have a few. We're working with one old friend of ours, actually the original bass player from the first incarnation of the Slumlords. So we'll see how that works out and all of that. But we find ourselves with revolving guitar players, especially lead guitar players. They have a lot to do because they're busy. They're really good. So they're in a lot of different bands. So we had to let Bill go for at least for a while because Wild Bill's on tour, and he plays with several different well-known bands, The Beat and Bow Wow Wow, and and some others, and so when we can get him, we'll take him. He knows our material and he loves it, and he loves our politics, and so that's a good fit. So there are others out there that that we have our eye on and that we're working with right now. We're trying to record with someone that's going to be somewhat solid.
Wow. No, I was just going to ask, what kind of plans do you have for some new material? What can we expect?
Well, we want to. We're getting ready to record pretty soon, probably in the next few months, and we have a big show coming up with Fear and DOA at oh God, what's the name of that place? I've never played it before. The Vermont, I think it's called the Vermont, and in Hollywood, and we just want to get our stuff out, especially now. Our lyrics are all about, fuck the man. Right now, the man is really, really on my nerves. I mean, everything is really distorted, and democracy is slipping away, and so we want our message out there. We have a song that's about the cops. The cops and the Klan go hand in hand, you know, and we want that message out. And people that don't like it, that's fine. They don't have to like it, but we need our core audience. We need our core supporters that know that we're all in the same boat, you know, with the Supreme Court getting rid of so many rights and giving themselves so much more power with the Chevron doctrine. And you know about that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
About the taking power away from agencies like the Food and Drug Administration and the Environmental Protection Agency and giving it to them. You know, there's gonna be a lot of fucked up things that go on in the next, you know, in the next, I don't even know how long. I mean, and I'm just hoping for the best. I'm hoping that he doesn't win, that Trump doesn't win, and to tell everybody to vote like your life depends on it. Vote like the air you breathe depends on it, like the water that you drink depends on it, like your children's future depends on it. And that may sound dramatic, but it's really true. This is really an evil force that's about to be unleashed, and we need to all unite and stay together and fight this shit and support each other. So
Yeah, no, I think voting is one of the most fundamental rights we have as citizens, and we all should certainly exercise it. Let me ask you this, because you are very you are very active socially in your lyrics, right?
yes.
How did that come from? Like, some people, some people get in music, they want to write about love and flowers and this, that, and the other. How did you land on social injustice?
I'm just very angry. It made me very angry, and the my outlet was to write lyrics. You know, I've been an activist since I was 20 years old, when the first time they tried to take away the right to choose for a woman. And, you know, my friends and I wore hangers on our heads, and we were very active in, you know, in all kinds of protests. And I've just been that way all my life, fighting, you know, for for rights, for civil rights, and for just, you know, against injustice for everyone. Like, even if it doesn't involve me, it still involves me in my heart. And so, yeah, I'm very passionate, very angry, and very passionate right now. So, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of really good music that comes out from this, because there always
Well,
is.
let me ask you about that. Like, everybody has a different way of creating, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the things that you do to foster your own creativity? Things that, ways and things that you do to feed your mind, your soul, to allow your creativity to flow.
Well, I read a lot. And I, you know, I attend protests, and I'm active in certain things. There's the Answer Coalition Act now to stop war and end racism, and I was active in them for a long time. I draw my inspiration from injustices and finding the truth and writing about it, and so it fuels me. It really does.
Well, is that what drew you to punk as opposed to any other genre to focus on?
Well, I mean, punk has always been, um, you know, sort of politically tongue in cheek, or straight up, like with the English music, like straight up political. And I've always been drawn to that. Um, I mean, you know, I was a rocker when I was a kid, you know, and but when I heard punk, I mean, it just spoke to me, and I don't know what it was. I mean, I've always felt alienated from my family, and so this family was the family that I could really depend on, and we could all support each other, and it was very important to me.
It's interesting that you use the word family. I mean, going to punk rock bowling weekend and watching people interact, people who don't see themselves or see one another during the year, but come together for that festival to do it for you. It is one big musical family. It was very impressive to see
Yes.
how people were like that.
Absolutely, absolutely, and people bringing their kids, with their little headphones and their little jackets, and I just loved it. Like this one kid was like 3 years old. And he had a jean jacket on with a big Subhumans patch and Mickey Mouse is dead on it. It was just adorable, and for people to expose their kids to that, I just love that, because a lot of people, sometimes people become parents and they abandon their principles, their core principles, and I appreciate people that still keep it strong.
Yeah, no, it was a fascinating audience. So before you found punk, who were some of those early influences? Like, who are some of the musicians or singers that have had an influence on you and how you've created your style?
Well, Aretha was a big one. Aretha Franklin. When I was a little kid, I used to sing Aretha Franklin all the time around the house. And then it was, Led Zeppelin. I found it, I really loved Robert Plant's voice. And then when I researched it, because, I'm a lyricist, so I like to research things and know the lyrics, and found out that they were influenced by Big Mama Thornton, the blues singer. And so I got into blues that way. The same with the Stones. I got into blues because of the Stones. And those were big influences. Janis Joplin, Hart, um, that just, all those beautiful female voices, all, different from each other. And, and then later on, Exene, and then, you know, what am I trying to say here? Yeah, I just lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. Um, you know, mostly Exene. I mean, I actually had an X cover band called Brand X, and we did the whole X Los Angeles record, when I was young.
Nice.
And I just loved her off tone, the way she blended with John Doe. She wasn't on key, but it worked. It really worked. And so I loved that. And then Susie Sue from Susie and the Banshees. She's a big influence. Her vibrato and just the way she just brought a song. I loved that. Um, there's a lot of them.
Cool. With the career you've had, right? If you could go back and give your younger self a piece of advice, right?
Uh-huh.
From where you started, where you are, and realizing that there are probably some young up and coming musicians and people who are really trying to get in their career watching this, what advice would you give yourself now if you knew what you know now back then?
You mean as far as music goes, or as far as, what do you mean?
Well, as far as your career and music and what's brought you to where you are today, what advice would you give yourself?
I would say have more self-confidence and just go for it, and don't let no or any doubt take you away from what you really from your goal.
What are the best ways for people to interact and keep up with you guys? Where's your biggest social group that people can keep up on the band?
Instagram.
Definitely
okay. Instagram. So Instagram /LA Slumlords.
Perfect.
That's the best spot.
And getting back to kind of our learning about new music and other bands like at Punk Rock Bowling, who are a couple of people who are in your playlist right now? Who are you listening to that you really like that you might want to share with other people? Who are some of those artists?
Maid of Ace. Maid of Ace is from they're from Hackney, England, and they're all sisters, all 5 of them, and they are the rowdiest, coolest, badass bitches that I've ever met. And they just toured with Green Day, so they're going to blow up, and I'm really happy for them.
Nice.
So yeah, so Maid of Ace and Infamous Stiffs, as I told you before. Scotty DeVonzo, the lead singer, amazing, just amazing front man. And let's see, Disgusting and the Rats, another great band. Who else? Amel and the Sniffers. I know that they're not new, but love them.
Well, no, I mean, that's great. I think it's important that we share, not only should be people checking out the LA Slumlords, which I highly recommend, but they should also be listening to other artists, and we should share these things because the community of artists helps the other artists, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We have to grow it together. So, hey, Patty, I appreciate you spending some time with us today here on Almost Famous Magazine. Everybody, check out the LA Slumlords. If you're enjoying these hangs, please subscribe. Put comments below. We'll make sure that Patty sees any comments that you leave. Get a conversation started so you can become a big fan. So, Patty, thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely, Scott. Take care, everybody. Peace.